Hello, Math 140 students. We're going to pick up on page 17, solving systems of linear inequalities. So for right now, I just want to review. So this isn't anything new for number 1. I want to just make sure and review how to graph a linear equation. So remember, what we want is to get it into that y is equal to mx plus b form, where b represents the y-intercept, which is going to be your starting point at 0b, where you have your y value here as b. And your m value is your slope, and that's going to tell you either how far up and down to go or left and right to go. So in particular, I have the equation negative 3x plus 4 is equal to 1. So I'm going to add 3x to both sides. And I apologize, that was a y there. So now I have y is equal to 3x plus 1. So that tells me my y-intercept is at 0, 1. So 0, 1 is going to be my y-intercept. I also have my slope. My slope here is 3, or 3 over 1, so that tells me to go up 3 and to the right 3. So up 3, oops, I meant to say up 3 and to the right 1. I counted it correctly, but I just said it wrong. And so hopefully it's a straight line more or less. So remember, this is nothing new. Hopefully you already know how to graph a linear equation. It was just a quick review I wanted to give you. Now here's the new part. This is now where we are going to have an inequality. So whenever you see that inequality, this means that we are going to have to shade. So this is really important. So we're going to get the y isolated. So isolate y variable. That is what you kind of want to do first. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. So now I have a negative y greater than or equal to a negative 2x plus 2. From here, I'm going to divide by a negative 1. And remember, whenever you divide or multiply by a negative, that's going to change the direction of an inequality. So I have a positive y, a positive 2x, and a minus a 2. Because 2 divided by 1 is 2. And since the inequality changed, it's not going to be less than or equal to. So I do have my y-intercept. That's at 0, negative 2. That is where I'm starting at 0, negative 2. My slope is here. My slope is 2 over 1, so I'm going to go up 2 to the right 1. Or I can go down 2 to the left 1. So more or less, that's what my equation is going to look like. If I have this or this, so less than or greater than or equal to, this tells me it's going to be a solid line, which I have. Versus if I had this less than or greater than, without the or equal to, it would be a dashed line. And now I have to think about the shading. Since I have y is less than or equal to 2x minus 2, this represents less than or equal. Well, because I have the word less, that tells me that I'm going to be shading below. Shade below the line. So if I'm looking at the line and I'm going to be shading below, that's going to be, well, think of it here as your y-intercept, okay? So think of it, okay, here's your y-intercept. here are above the line, and here would be below the line. Okay, from that y-intercept we have above the line and below the line. Since we have less than or equal to, then below the line would be here. So this is where I'm going to be shading. And in Newton, if you want more explanation, they talk about the test point method. And you can go ahead and do the test point method. That's not necessarily the way I would go about it. I just go about the literal translation, right? Okay. So let's try this again. Except now we're going to have the system. So let's think about this bottom one since it's already isolated for us. So I have y is less than or equal to 2x minus 1. Perfect. I know the y-intercept. That's at 0, negative 1. Perfect. Now, this also tells me that my slope is equal to 2 over 1. So I'm going to go up 2 and to the right 1. Or I can go down 2 to the left 1. And because the inequality has a line underneath it, it's less than or equal to, then I know that my line here is a solid line. And this is saying less than, right? This is saying that y is less than or equal to. So if I'm looking at this y-intercept here, above the line is here and below the line is here, which tells me that I'm going to be shading below that line if it's less than or equal to. So this is where I'm shading here. And some of you guys might have a cool way to graph, which I'm excited for, but for now, this is the only thing I got. Okay. So now I want to think about my second equation here. So for that second equation, that first equation, I have x plus y is greater than 6. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides and get that y is greater than negative x plus 6. Well, I know from here my y-intercept's at positive 6. I know that my slope tells me to go down 1, right 1. Or I can go up and to the left. And because the inequality doesn't have a line underneath it, it's going to be dashed, okay? So I'm going to have a dashed line here. So it's broken. And this is saying greater than. So if it's greater than or equal to, if that's my y-intercept, above it would be greater than. So in your homework, it's going to ask you for where the two colors meet. And I think that's where they make it purple. So if that was the case, where they overlap to make it purple is where the green and the yellow meet. So that would be here. So just know that in this little area, this is where the solution set would be because that's where the green and the yellow overlap. So let's look at our next example. So I have x plus y is greater than negative 1. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract x from both sides. So I get y is greater than negative x minus 1. So I know my y-intercept. That's going to be a negative 1. My slope tells me it's negative 1. So I'm going to go down 1 to the right 1. I can go up and to the left. And this is a broken or dashed line because there's no or equal to, right? There's no line underneath it. And this is saying y is greater than. So if I'm looking at the y-intercept right here, what are all the y values that are bigger, that are greater? That's above. So I'm going to be shading all of this area. This would be above the line. So you always want to keep it in reference to that y-intercept, if possible. Okay. So now let's take a look at our second equation. And actually, I'm going to make it blue. Why not? So for that second equation, I have a 4x minus y is less than or equal to 3. So I'm going to subtract a 4x from both sides. So I get a negative y is less than or equal to a negative 4x plus 3. From here, I'm going to divide by a negative 1. So that I get that y. And here, because I divided by a negative, I have to switch the inequality to give me a positive 4x minus 3. So now I know my y-intercept is at negative 3. My slope tells me to go up 4 and to the right 1. Or down 4 and right 1. And this is a solid line. And this says y is greater than. So if I'm looking at this y-intercept now, so this is the one that I'm looking at, and if I'm looking at greater than or equal to, so I'm thinking above those values. So above would be over here. That would be on this side. So where the yellow and the blue intersect, that green area, because yellow and blue make green, that is going to be my solution set. And that is the end of this section. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to contact the Math Success Center or reach out to the tutor or send me an email. Thank you.